Hi there, my name's Simon Drew, and welcome to the Practical Stoic Podcast, where I give you practical Stoic advice for modern times. If you'd like to see more information about this podcast, or if you'd like to see more of my free resources, just go to my website. It's risetothegoodlife.com. But for now, I really hope that you enjoy this podcast, and if you do, then I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe on iTunes and leave a positive review so that more people can have the chance to listen to this great work. For good or for ill, life and nature are governed by laws that we can't change. The quicker we accept this, the more tranquil we can be. Those are the words of Epictetus, a man who, having spent much of his life as a slave, understood that life is inherently unfair. The world is not a level playing field by any stretch of the imagination. People are born into different circumstances, to different parents in different countries, in different economic and political situations, and on top of that, we are all different in terms of our natural abilities and skills. Some people are naturally predisposed to be marathon runners, whether they know it or not. Other people are more suited to sprinting. Some people have a great talent for music, while others simply cannot hold a tune. We are all different, and we all have strengths and weaknesses. You may have expected that Epictetus, having grown up as a slave, would bemoan the world and curse it for the cruelty that it inflicts by not allowing us to all have equal chances and equal opportunities to achieve exactly what we want when we want it. But he doesn't do that. No, he does quite the opposite. He actually decodes this puzzle and gives us a roadmap which we can use to get the most out of this seemingly unfair situation. This is what he says, quote, "Understand what freedom really is and how it is achieved. Freedom isn't the right or ability to do whatever you please. Freedom comes from understanding the limits of our own power and the natural limits set in place by divine providence." End quote. So already he's imparting some serious wisdom here. If we truly want a good life, and if we want to be free from all the pains of the world, we must understand the limitations that have been placed on us. Epictetus goes on and teaches us not how to necessarily get rid of this potentially unfair situation, but rather how to work with it in order to experience the highest possible satisfaction in life, despite these natural limitations being in place. He says, quote, "By accepting life's limits and inevitabilities, and working with them rather than fighting them, we become free. If, on the other hand, we succumb to our passing desires for things that aren't in our control, freedom is lost." End quote. I love what Epictetus is teaching here. It's kind of like a guerrilla tactic for getting the most out of an unfair situation. From my interpretation of his teachings, there are 3 steps that will allow a person to get the most out of life and to experience true freedom in spite of life's limitations. Step 1 is to accept. And I don't mean accept in the context of accepting that things cannot change, or accepting that this is how it is and this is how it will always be. But I simply mean that we should look at our life for what it truly is, and that we should not see our lives through any other lens but the truth. What are the limitations placed on us right now? What is the truth? What is potentially holding me back? In life, we need to be negative as well as positive. You cannot go through life only seeing open doors. This will eventually drive you to insanity. Here's an example for you. An effective amateur actor will face each new audition knowing and accepting that despite their best efforts, 99 times out of 100 they will be turned down. They won't get the call back, the producer won't call them, and they won't get the part. By knowing this, they are able to look at what they can control, which is how many auditions they attend and how many hours they spend rehearsing the scripts. On the contrary, an extremely ineffective actor will go to the industry believing that they are the new big thing and that anyone would be glad to have them. A few rejections go by and they are disheartened, so they quit. They didn't understand and accept the harsh realities of the industry, and so they quit too soon. The next step is to understand. It is one thing to accept a limitation, but it is another thing to understand it. Going back to my analogy, the amateur actor will try to understand why it is that he may only get 1 role out of 100. He will discover that this limitation exists because the market is saturated with wannabe celebrities, and there are only so many roles available. He will learn that this limitation also exists because many times it's not what you know or how you act, but it's who you know. He will try as best as he can to understand exactly why these limitations exist. And not only this, but he will also try to understand what he can control and what he can't. He can't control whether or not the producers pick him for the roles, and he can't control how well his competitors' auditions go, but he can control how many auditions he attends, and he can control his own efforts. By doing all this to understand the situation, he is able to move to step 3, guerrilla warfare. He builds a better network. He tries to make new friends in the industry. He keeps in contact with people and regularly asks around to see if there are new openings. He plays on his strengths rather than his weaknesses. He uses discipline and training to increase his skills and to stand out in the crowd. He never wastes a minute of time that could be spent applying for new auditions or for practicing a script. He knows that if he can be a 1 in a million kind of person, a 1 in a million kind of actor, and a 1 in a million networker, then he has the best chance of achieving his goal. And all the while he does understand and has surrendered himself to the fact that he may be the best actor in the world and still not make it in the industry. This does not bother him because he cannot control this. He only focuses on what he can control. This is the difference between him and the others. He accepts the limits, he understands the limits, and he bypasses the limits by using his strengths, by focusing on what he actually can control, and by knowing what will actually make him stand out in the crowd. The others will simply swim against the tide, all the while complaining about how tired their arms are. It's not fair, they will say. I should have had that part. Those others aren't nearly as good as I am. Well, so what? Who cares? Life is unfair, and you're in a career that is full of limitations. Accept this fact and decide whether you want to be a slave to your dream or a free person chasing a dream, because there is a big difference. The advice that we receive from Epictetus is clear. True freedom comes only once we have come face to face with our limitations, once we have truly understood our state here on earth, once we have decided not to swim against the tide. And it's important that I once again point out that Epictetus is not saying that we should just accept a lesser existence, one that is held back by limitations. In fact, one of the foundational values of Stoicism is the idea that we should constantly be striving for virtue, pushing ourselves to be better than we were yesterday, and working towards being better people. By doing this, and by always looking for ways to improve, we actually put ourselves in a better position to overcome our limits. So I'd like to challenge you to look at the limitations in your life. Are you a slave to these circumstances that you cannot control? Are you swimming against the current? Do you ever feel like you're not making any progress despite your strongest efforts? Maybe this is because you don't truly understand your limitations enough to be able to work with them instead of working against them. Maybe you're trying to control things that simply aren't within your power. An athlete with an injury knows that it would be catastrophic to continue training as if they were injury-free. They must instead tailor their training to that injury so that they can get the most out of a negative situation, a situation with many limitations which they cannot necessarily control. So it is with us. We must find ways to live with and make the most out of our lot in life. And by doing this, we will truly find freedom that most people will never experience. Hi there, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I really hope that everything that I'm putting out there is helping you on your Stoic journey through life. If you have any questions or you'd like to get in contact with me or you'd just like to have a discussion, then please go to my website and send me an email. The website is risetothegoodlife.com. Otherwise, you can send me a message on Facebook at Daily Stoic Quotes or my name, Simon Drew. Anyway, I'll talk to you next time, but until then, I hope that this episode has helped you on your rise to the good life. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Practical Stoic Podcast. I really hope that it's valuable to you, and I really hope that it helps you to live a better life. If it has been valuable to you, please don't forget to subscribe on iTunes and leave a positive review. If you'd like to see more free resources, just go to my website. It's risetothegoodlife.com.